FedEx Series comes to Britain in 2 weeks' time, but today they race on the streets of the mile-high city of Denver in Colorado. Last week, Britain's Dario Franchitti proved he's still a winner, but Cristiano D'Amata still leads the championship. Today, it's another Brazilian, Bruno Janqueira, who starts in pole position. Hello and welcome everyone, and welcome to the fourth kart FedEx race in 4 weeks. At the conclusion of today's race, all the cars and equipment will be packed up for the journey to Corby in Northamptonshire and the second Rockingham 500. So it's appropriate that two of my regular experts, Lawrence Foster of Autosport and Paul Cherry, have been joined by Rockingham's Chief Executive David Grace. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. Disappointing news, though, is that Scotland's Dario Franchitti has only qualified his team Cool Green Lola in 14th place, even though he was less than a second slower than the pole sitter Janqueira. But then, look at this, in morning warm-up his brakes caught fire. A heated experience for him there. David Grace, I've got to say that with the Rockingham race just a couple of weeks ago, you're still keeping us waiting as regards to who's going to be driving the Team St George car. Can you give us an exclusive today?
Not quite. What I can tell you is it arrived in Stansted yesterday, the car, and it's now at Ray Mallock's workshops being all liveried up, and we'll announce it partway through next week.
It's been quite a long list, hasn't it? I mean, I've got one here shortened down to Johnny Herbert, Darren Turner, Darren Manning, and even the Pac West driver, ex-Pac West driver, Mark Blundell.
Yeah.
Is it one of those?
It could be. I think there's been a long queue of people who want to drive it. I mean, it's a great opportunity for somebody. It's got to be an Englishman who has a crack in this Team St George, and we whittled it down to a lot less than the original lineup, but still a few in the running. How
many were in the original lineup, just out of interest?
I think over a dozen people probably phoned me up over the last 3 or 4 weeks, because it's a golden opportunity.
Have you got to pick a driver that fits the car? Or?
It would help. They can't be too wide and they can't be too long, so that narrows it down a bit. They've got to be roughly the right sort of size. But there's some talented young English drivers around that we can pick from. We
wait with bated breath then here on the show. Now then, I came up to visit you a couple of weeks ago. Preparations were just about all done and dusted at the track. I mean, you've made some vast improvements. We talked about that.
Yeah.
You must just be praying now for the weather, surely.
Yes, the weather will obviously help. It just makes a whole of an outdoor event so much more exciting. So we're praying for some good weather. I think operationally we're in much better shape than we were this time last year, and we're just pushing those last few tickets.
Are you
the difference is that we go to different places every week to race. Unlike Formula One that hold all their races on proper racetracks, kart is 1 week in a street, 1 week on a road course, 1 week on an oval, like David has just explained. And sometimes you don't always get it right with the setup. This is a brand new track. Nobody's been here before. As we've said before, Green have sometimes taken longer to adapt from the Reynard settings that they have to the Lola ones, but here it's just taken them that little bit longer. A lot of the practice sessions were red flagged. People have not had a lot of track time.
Not an easy racetrack, I'm told, as well. It's been a very difficult track to set up for.
No, I've spoken to a number of people over the course of the weekend, and they all say the same thing, which Lawrence has just touched on, that, it's the Rocky Mountain State, and that's probably what the main straight must look like.
Well, we can see the cars warming up on their warm-up laps as it goes at the moment. Looking at Paul Tracy right at the back, Michael Andretti there on row 9. It's absolutely incredible that he's that far back. Well, it looks as if they're about to go green in Denver, so let's join the action with Jeremy Shaw and Lee Diffie at trackside.
So we will see green this time by, and the order from Jim Swintel is that he's going to look at the first 4 to 6 cars, and if those first 3 rows are packed up nicely, he'll let it go, because they come onto the main straight now, and look at them fly. Will we get green this time by? We do! So they haven't wasted any time in starting the Shell Grand Prix of Denver, and Scott Dixon has already made up a position on Shinji Nakano.
Yes, he has. A good move there by Scott Dixon, a move to the inside line. Very tight corner here in turn 1. That's where Kenny Brack crashed this morning. Great start though by Scott Dixon. He's carrying the Coors Light silver bullet colours this weekend in Denver, Colorado, the home track for Coors, and he's making good use of it there.
There was a lot of worry and a lot of thought and a lot of talk about whether there'd be a big pile-up in turn 1 or the cars getting caught up. Well, we've avoided that situation, thankfully. Look how spread out they are as they come into this enormous 120 feet wide turn 5. They're calling it mile wide. Someone locks up Tracy. Whoa! Paul Tracy gets together with his teammate, Dario Franchitti, a full 360 and tries to keep going, and his teammate is out. Look at Dario Franchitti. The weekend could not have been worse for Dario. It does get worse now.
God, it couldn't be much worse than that. Taken out by your teammate of all things. Paul Tracy there just locks up the brakes. Crazy move by Paul Tracy. There is Paul. He appears to have got away with it. But I tell you what, Barry Green there, the team owner, will be somewhat less than gruntled. He'd be really upset with that. You know, they were at the back of the field, were 13th and 14th in qualifying. 14th and 15th, I guess they were. A long, long way back. And what you don't need to do is make a daft move on the first lap. That's what Paul Tracy did. His teammate is out of the race. Last week's winner, Dario Franchitti, out.
Dario said to me this weekend, it's a big, tough ask, but there's a big gap between myself and D'Amato, but the championship is not over. Well, the Scot has given away more. He's given away twice as many DNFs. He's had 6 DNFs to D'Amato's 3. That now makes it 7 DNFs for Dario Franchitti. So as they stretch down the back one more time, they sort themselves out. We get reports that there was also contact with Servia as well there. He was on the outside of Dario.
Servia certainly locked up the brakes on the outside, and here is a replay. You can see that Servia way out to the left. They're getting well sideways as down the inside there comes Paul Tracy, and with Oriol Servia already committed to the outside, Dario Franchitti absolutely nowhere to go.
So he was sandwiched in the middle there. This is on board with Paul Tracy. The replay. Franchitti to your immediate right and Servia right over to the far right.
And look at Paul. You can see his front brakes all locked up. That he bounces high up in the air. It's incredible if he managed to get away with that. But it was just a daft move. He was just going way too fast for the corner. Paul Tracy, with the amount of experience that he has, that's not what you expect from somebody. 185 starts he's got in this series coming into this race. And he knows you can't win a race on the first corner. He also knows you can make up a lot of places on the first lap in a motor race. That's what he's trying to do, and it bit him.
Order is Junqueira, the race leader, on screen now. Fernandez, Dixon, Nakano, Fittipaldi and Brack. Top 6 unchanged. D'Amato, Carpentier, Canaan and Jourdain. So status quo as far as the order is concerned, other than Scott Dixon making that early jump to get past Shinji Nakano. Look at that new colour scheme of the Coors Light car. And that simply is a big thank you from Chip Ganassi to the Coors Brewing Company because of their relationship with Chip Ganassi and the NASCAR team. And they have just re-signed with Ganassi as far as the NASCAR program is concerned. And Coors Brewing is from Denver, and Ganassi just wanted to say thanks. So they've painted the car up in those new colours. It's only for this weekend, but it looks great. Scott's gone and got a new driving suit and everything as well. So it's the Silver Bullet livery, as Jeremy mentioned earlier. It looks great up close in the flesh, and it comes up pretty nice on TV as well. Into turn 5. It's enormous, isn't it?
The mile-wide turn, they're calling it here, in the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado, 5,200 feet above sea level. That altitude here is certainly causing a lot of problems this weekend. Friday and Saturday for qualifying, it was very, very hot indeed here. It was way high 80 degrees or even low 90s, and that was causing all sorts of problems. With the high altitude, the air density here is much less than it would be at sea level. There's about 18% less air going through the radiators than there would be at sea level. That is causing big problems in terms of keeping everything cool on these cars. And by that, I mean both the brakes and the engines themselves.
Word through from race control. They are going to black flag Paul Tracy for unjustifiable risk.
I think he probably knows he's at an unjustifiable risk. He's at the back of the field. Don't really see what they're going to gain by black flagging him, but yeah, he was in the wrong, so yeah, they've got to lay down the rules. I think probably for Wally Downer, back upon reflection, yeah, not a bad idea. I think he does certainly deserve some sort of a penalty for what was a very stupid move indeed, and you can rest assured the sanctions won't end there, because Barry Green will be very, very upset with Paul Tracy when they get back to the pits at the end of the race. That's of course unless Paul can somehow pull out some sort of miracle and get himself from last place right now up towards the front of the field.
Looking at our championship leader, Cristiano D'Amato, it is his worst road/street course qualifying this year. He qualified 8th in Motegi, 7th in Milwaukee, started 7th here today. So he's going to have a tough ask to get up there, but he's starting to gain ground on Kenny Brack as they push up the front straight one more time.
It's also 9 straight races that D'Amato has been among the top 2 rows of the grid, and now this time he was back on row 4. Now you can see him there behind Kenny Brack and Cristiano D'Amato. You know, he's got a very healthy championship lead, and he's going to try and extend it this afternoon with 7th place. He's got quite a lot of work on his hands.
You'll notice the difference in surface around here. There's something like 2/3, maybe even 3/4 of the track is smooth asphalt. The rest is concrete. That particular area there, turn 5, with a massive concrete on the inside line, they had some problems when they were laying down the asphalt. They had to dig it back up, and by the time it was time to relay it, they didn't have the mandatory 65-day curing period for the road, so they had to lay in those big concrete slabs.
A lot of the drivers were complaining on Friday, particularly after the first session, how bumpy this racetrack was. It's kind of two racetracks in one. The first half of the lap is very, very bumpy indeed. The second half of the racetrack is actually fairly smooth. They've laid new asphalt on much of the racetrack. We're now going into turn 1 past the start finish line. This is Bruno Junqueira there, two turns 2 and 3 at this stage on the lap. But they tried to bring in a grinder to grind out some of that rough concrete that abounds through turns 2, 3, 4, 5 on this racetrack on Friday night. But as I said earlier on, this is a holiday weekend in North America, and as a result of that, Martin Dixon, who is the circuit development manager for kart, Martin Thake, I beg your pardon, I knew I was wrong there. Martin Thake, who is the circuit development manager, contacted 6 different construction companies in the area on Friday evening, but because of the fact it's a holiday weekend, he couldn't get that grinding equipment necessary. So instead of that, they've patched a few areas, they've tried to smooth it out the best they can, and really it's up to the teams to cope with it. And some of the engineers said, you know, what the heck, this series is all about variety, making our cars work on different sorts of racetracks. It's all very well if we can make our cars work on a smooth racetrack. Here the challenge is to make it work on a bumpy racetrack.
It's a fairly slow track as far as overall an average lap per speed. It's less than 100 miles an hour, about 150 kilometers per hour. But watch this, they get up to about 185 miles per hour down here. We ride with Bruno Junqueira. And all the way back, down through the gears, into turn 5, and there's short shoot heading up towards turn 6, and then you get into the real tight, twisty stuff. Junqueira has the fastest lap of the race so far on 1:02.6. And he is our race leader. Yeah, that was set last time around, and Paul Tracy did come into the pits to serve his stop-and-go penalty, so he is farther back now in last place, but he is at least still running. And Junqueira is getting quicker and quicker, now coming into turn 9, the final corner on this racetrack here. Accelerates onto the start-finish straight, past underneath the Coors Light Bridge there across the start-finish line. A little bit slower that time around, 1 minute 2.890. It's a couple of tenths slower than his best lap set last time around, and that compares to his pole lap of yesterday at 1 minute 1.703. So they were within 1 second of their fastest lap set in qualifying yesterday. A very hot pace here in Denver this afternoon. We didn't get to mention the circuit analysis for you today. As you can see on your screen, it's a 100 lap race, and actually CART reduced that from an original 115 laps. There is some concern over the attrition rate, and there's a lot of concern, as Jeremy mentioned, about brakes and engines going the distance here at this high altitude. And we've had very warm conditions this weekend, so they brought it back to 100 laps. Scott Dixon starting to close in on Adrian Fernandez, incidentally. And the pit window is 32. Every 32 laps, everyone must pit. So we're now in the first pit window. You can come in as early as lap 4. So anyone is eligible to stop right now. But I think on this first stop, Jeremy, it's generally perceived that most of them will run close enough to that full 32. Yeah, I think they will. That's probably going to be the strategy. We saw that last time, 1 week ago, Cristiano Damata made an early pit stop relative to everybody else, and that certainly bit him. It was a bad move there by Newman Haas Racing, so I don't think we're going to see anybody, at least at the front of the field, try that sort of strategy here this afternoon. Let me tell you about Scott Dixon this weekend. He has been amazing. Last year's Rookie of the Year, has been in the top 4 or 5 every single session this weekend. Right from the word go, he was one of the first cars out on the circuit on Friday, and whatever it is with Scott, his team, the car and this track, it's gelling, because the young Kiwi has been very impressive and incredibly consistent. He was the fastest in this morning's warm-up, and he actually went faster in this morning's warm-up than what he did in yesterday's qualifying session. He certainly did, and conditions today a good bit cooler than they were yesterday. There was some cloud cover this morning as well when the cars were out there for their final warm-up session. Certainly conditions a lot more conducive to quick lap rate. Yesterday it was so hot and so slippery out on the racetrack that the drivers really weren't able to make the best use of their cars. They've
further developed the systems, well, the suspension settings on the cars overnight, and are certainly working a lot better in a cooler conditions today, and particularly working well for this man, Bruno Junqueira. Another fastest lap last time around, 1 minute 2.415. This time as he went across the start-finish line, 62.5, so he's really turning a very hot pace at the front of the field. You can see the gap now over the second-place car of Adrian Fernandez, already over 4 seconds.
He's enjoying a healthy margin, and Adrian Fernandez is enjoying quite a successful weekend, considering it was only 2 races ago he started last in this field to start on the front row, and that was courtesy of his Friday pole. He was quick yesterday, but his yesterday time would not have put him on the front row, but of course the rules in kart, road and street course races, in qualifying that is, if you get the provisional pole on Friday, you get a championship point and a guaranteed front row. Paul Tracy, the man who got tangled up on lap 1 down in turn 5 with his teammate and Oriol Servia. And Franchitti was put in a situation where he had absolutely no choice in the matter. Servia got way out of control, and as he was coming back to the racing line, he was on the right-hand side, this guy was on the inside, and there's damage on that side of the car. That's obviously where the heavy contact with his teammate Dario Franchitti, and Franchitti, disappointing stuff.
Certainly is, and here we are on board again with Paul Tracy. Can't quite see, I don't think yet, Toru Takagi ahead of him, but he's certainly closing fairly rapidly on Takagi. He is probably lapping about a good half a second quicker than Toru Takagi on most laps is Paul Tracy, but still he's got quite a way before he's even going to see another car ahead of him.
Back to the race leader, Bruno Junqueira. 11 laps down already, we're on lap 12, 89 left to run here at the inaugural Shell Grand Prix of Denver. It's the exact same team that put together the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. So, and a lot of the key personnel actually come here, the construction crew and a lot of the infrastructure here in Denver, the bridges, the overhead bridges, the fencing, some of the fencing, some of the blocks, etc. Some of the grandstands actually. And Jim McCallion, who is the main man at Long Beach, who was Chris Pook's right-hand man and deputy for so many years in Long Beach, he is running this event just like he did at round 2 earlier this year. Great overhead shot as they come down into the 36-meter wide turn 5, and you're watching Scott Dixon in 3rd place try to put something over Adrian Fernandez. Counting this event, there are 6. Look how close Dixon is now. This is the closest we've seen him as they come into the very tight turn 8. Toru Takagi is exiting pit lane. He is already serviced for the first time, and he is out in the Walker Racing car. Counting this race, we have 6 rounds to go in the Kart FedEx Championship Series this year, and the season-ending race will be in Mexico City, and that is a massive event for Adrian Fernandez. He is like a rock star down there, a national hero. And Jeremy, they're talking on race day, perhaps a crowd of something like 250,000.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. The enthusiasm in Mexico, pretty much the same as it is up in Canada, just tremendous for this Kart FedEx Championship Series. They really appreciate the competition that these guys put on. It's a very competitive field, and again, you know, we've got to take it away from the fans in Colorado too. A big turnout here all weekend long. A lot of people here on Friday, a lot more people here today, and they're enjoying a pretty interesting race. Certainly Junqueira is pulling away, but look at this train of cars here, all battling from 2nd, 3rd, all the way back there to Patrick Carponci in 8th place. A little bit of a gap now back to Tony Kanaan in 9th, behind Kanaan, the 2 Team Rahal cars of Michel Jourdain and Jimmy Vasser.
Yeah, Vasser hasn't been able to find anything there on his younger and less experienced teammate. Jourdain maintains his starting position of 10th. Meanwhile, we're approaching the halfway mark of this first pit window, and they must come in. Just repeating, if you've just joined us, welcome to the Shell Grand Prix of Denver. Everyone must pit by lap 32.
That's exactly right, and Paul Tracy is continuing to make up ground towards the back of the field. He's now caught up almost with Mario Dominguez. Michael Andretti has found a way past Dominguez, and Toru Takagi has been into the pits for his first scheduled pit stop.
So as racing continues in Denver, we'll take a short break. Be with us in a couple of minutes as they come in for their pit stops, their first pit stops here in Denver. We'll see you in a moment. In the top positions in Denver, Bruno Genquera still leads from Adrian Fernandez, under pressure from Scott Dixon. Shinji Nakano is there in 4th and Christian Fittipaldi is 5th. Let's get back to the track live and our commentary team.
Through trying to get past Toru Takagi, it's now jumped back up to almost 4.4 seconds for Bruno Genquera.
You can see how hard Bruno was trying there to build up that lead again. It was up over 5 seconds a couple of laps ago on lap 15. We're now on lap 19, and he lost a good couple of seconds trying to get past the lap car of Toru Takagi. And you can see when he locked up the brakes going into turn 9 how hard he was trying. But you've got to be careful on this racetrack. You don't want to lock up the brakes too much. Takagi, get out of the way. Here comes the 2nd and 3rd place cars. It's Adrian Fernandez, and behind him is Scott Dixon. Takagi has been off the pace all weekend. Talking to his engineer earlier on, Steve Newey, just a little bit this morning. Takagi, generally speaking, as we've seen this several times in the past, he's the last of the late breakers. He really does get on the brakes awfully late, and on this sort of racetrack here where it's fairly bumpy, he therefore, because he gets on the brakes too late, he has a hard time getting the car turned into the corner, and he's always complaining of understeer on the car, probably as much his driving style as anything else. But he's struggled all weekend, and he's now clearly off the pace here in the race.
Scott Dixon did a good job to get around Toru Takagi. This has given Christian Fittipaldi some extra motivation. Look at Fittipaldi. He is all over the back of Shinji Nakano. Well, we mentioned earlier about that coming together between the two Team Cool Green drivers of Paul Tracy, Dario Franchitti. Franchitti was sandwiched between his teammate and Oriol Servia. We're now joined on the line by team owner Barry Green. Hi Barry, it's Lee Diffie here. What's your take on that incident?
Well, one of the little problems I guess we have with Paul from time to time, you know, he's very frustrated. This weekend we didn't give him a good car to qualify with. We qualified down the back, and we knew there'd be some incidents. I guess it just makes it twice as bad when it involves Paul's teammate. But you know, it's a corner we have had trouble with all weekend, and it's not a happy camp right now.
No, Barry, this is Jeremy Shaw. It's, sorry you're joining us under these circumstances with one of your cars out of the race. Paul at least is still in the running there, but you made a lot of changes to the cars over the weekend to try and get the drivers happier with the handling. And I thought this morning after the warm-up, they were actually probably the happiest they've been all weekend.
Maybe that's what affected Paul's thinking. You know, he was happy with his car after this morning's warm-up, and you know, trying to get to the front on the first lap. And it's one of his problems, but it also has won him a lot of races. You know, as I said, Jeremy, when it's your teammate, it really hurts.
Must be frustrating, Barry, when you go from such a high like last weekend with Dario's victory to something like this.
Fantastic weekend last weekend, you know, but we turned up here. We did not do a good job engineering, giving the guys a car to qualify with, and consequently we qualified down the back, and you cannot do that in this series. You know, as you guys know, it's all too tight for that.
Barry Green, thanks for joining us under such difficult circumstances. And we see Cristiano D'Amato get through on the inside of Toru Takagi now, so everyone is coming, lining up to get past the Japanese driver.
Yeah, and give Takagi credit there for trying to keep out of the way of these guys. There's Patrick Carpentier next in line, and Patrick certainly has made good progress the last few laps. He was quite a long way behind D'Amato. He's now made up a lot of that deficit, and if he can get past Takagi, maybe he can begin to put the pressure on the championship leader.
So the order remains the same. It's Genquera boasting a 5.5 second lead. 21 laps into this, Fernandez, Dixon, Nakano, Fittipaldi trying to make up that margin. He must have got a little excited earlier. He was right on the back of Shinji Nakano, but Nakano did a good job to get past Takagi first and foremost, and then get a bit of a break. Kenny Brack is 6th, D'Amato, Carpentier, Canaan and Jourdain. And Jeremy, we mentioned at the top of the show concern over the brakes going the distance and the engines going the distance in terms of temperature. We've already had a first radio communication from Canaan and expressing his concern to Mo Nunn that his engine is running high, the temperature is running high, and his brakes are starting to go away.
Yeah, a lot of these teams, they've done as much as they possibly can to get more cooling to these engines, to the radiators, improve the efficiency of the radiators. Most of the teams change their radiators overnight on these cars, which they wouldn't normally do before a race after qualifying, but just using fresh radiators to get as much flow through the radiators as they possibly can. We've also got various cutouts in the bodywork to try and get more air flowing through them as well. So they're really on the limit, some of these guys, in trying to get these engines cooled down. And as I said earlier on, brakes also a problem. particularly when you're coming down into turn 5 like we were there on the board with the race leader, and it's you brake very, very hard.
Trying to get through the corner, as was I, and down the inside came Paul. You know, it's certainly not the first time it's happened between him and I, and it's not the first time it's happened to him this year. I just wish the guy would engage his brain every once in a while, and you know, as usual though, I come off worse, Paul's still running. What
do you say when he gets back out of the car after the race? You say, what were you thinking?
I don't think I should discuss that on television, but he will be under no misapprehension what I'm thinking, because it's just stupid. I mean, let's be honest, it's just dumb.
Yes, Darius and Jeremy, sure, this is going to be doubly tough for you. Coming off a great win 1 week ago, and here you are. You struggled all weekend with the handling of the car, but I believe you made some pretty good gains, didn't you, this morning?
Yeah, we felt quite happy with the car this morning, Jeremy, relatively anyway. You know, we felt we could get some points today. I don't think we had a car to win by any means, but you know, with attrition and stuff, I think we're in a pretty good shape to score some points. But on the first lap, I mean, I can't believe Paul did it. It's just a bonehead move. There's no, you know, he's done it before, and I thought he'd learned.
Dario, as we talk, your technical partner, Michael Andretti, has just spun on track, but he's able to keep going again. You're one of the more experienced drivers in this Kart FedEx Championship Series. What were your thoughts on this particular track, and how does it shape up for a race?
Is that a polite way of saying that I'm oldly? It's not one of my favourites. That's a polite way again of putting this. It's way too bumpy in several sections, and the turn 6, 7, 8, 9 area is like an ice rink. So we've got some work to do for next year. But let's be honest, the Denver crowd have been fantastic. Big crowd here. And once we get a track that you know, they'll put on a good show, that it's going to be a great event here.
The next round in the championship is your home event, mate, at the Rockingham 500. I know you're looking forward to that. Lots of family and friends there. We'll see you there.
Thanks. See you later, guys.
Dario Franchitti, the one and only driver to be out of the Shell Grand Prix of Denver at this early stage. We're approaching the quarter mark of this race as Paul Tracy has caught up to the guy he started beside, Mario Dominguez. And sounds like Paul's going to be in for it when he gets back.
Yeah, I think he is, and quite rightly so. Dario, yeah, all credit to Dario even for speaking to us. He must be so disappointed. You know, he's got himself up in the championship last week, that great win in Vancouver. Yes, they struggled all weekend, but they had a pretty good setup this morning. They've been moving around with the under tray on the cars. There's Lola has two distinct under tray setups: the under wing of the car, the bodywork that goes underneath the car, and there's an oval track setup and a street course setup, and most of the teams here are running with the street course setup, but some of them are going back and forth. And Team Cool Green, they tried the oval setup, which actually gives a little bit more downforce and also gets a little bit better, but it doesn't give quite so good cooling. But they went back again from yesterday. They switched from the oval setup to the road course setup, and then back again to the oval setup this morning. But they found a fundamental change in the suspension geometry as well, and they certainly improved the car for the morning. So just a lot of juggling going on in that team. They finally thought they made some progress. So poor old Dario Franchitti, no chance now of building on that third place in the championship.
Everyone will be in within the next 6 laps. We've now done 26 laps as Scott Dixon continues the chase and the battle for second with Adrian Fernandez. Word from race control that Mario Dominguez has been given a warning about blocking Paul Tracy.
You're allowed to make one move in this series. If you're on the outside line, you can move across to the inside to defend that line. But if then the driver trying to overtake you goes to the outside, what you cannot do as a guy in front is move back to the outside to block him again. So if Dominguez has been found guilty of doing that, then pretty soon, first of all, he'll get a warning, and then he'll get a black flag.
Scott Dixon, who I mentioned earlier, has been incredibly consistent this weekend in practice and qualifying sessions, and he was fastest in the morning's warm-up, has been plagued by reliability problems. 4 DNFs in the last 5 races, and you have to say, without overdoing it, he's been robbed, because every time DNFs have struck, he has been in a high points position. More likely than not, he's been in the top 5, Jeremy.
He certainly has, and he's really run well in a lot of races. There is Scott Dixon in third place. He's putting the pressure on Adrian Fernandez. Can't seem to find a way past it behind them. We just get a glimpse of him every now and again. Is Shinji Nakano, who's doing an excellent job in the second of the Fernandez racing machines. Both of those cars have been up towards the front pretty much all weekend. Certainly Fernandez, every single session, he's been amongst the top 2 or 3, and Shinji Nakano made the big strides in qualifying yesterday afternoon. He was second fastest of all in that second period of qualifying, but due to the fact that Adrian Fernandez already he had tied up a front row start by virtue of being fastest on Friday. That meant that Sinji had to start third on the grid, despite the fact he set the second fastest time.
Getting closer and closer to that first round of pit stops, and this guy on screen as he comes into the start-finish straight, corporate boxes there, and you can see a good overview of, well, it's not exactly the most lengthiest front straight, and they come into this very tight turn one. You can see pit out just there. This massive building in the foreground is the Pepsi Center. Hosts NBA basketball, the NHL, rock concerts play there. It's a fantastic facility. Train line just below us where the people, the public and the race fans can arrive. Good access, really good access to this downtown circuit. Just over behind where this particular camera shot is Invesco Field, the home of the Denver Broncos NFL team. So this track weaves in and out of the downtown streets and in and around these massive facilities. Quite an interesting place. And it's not too far, for those of you who remember the 90 and 91 Denver street races, it's not too far away, is it really, Jeremy? Jeremy's busy working away on some notes at the moment. He didn't quite hear me there. Beavering away on his homework. Bruno Junqueira leads now by 6 seconds. He is bolting away.
Sorry about that, Lee. You were talking about the other track here. It's about a half a mile away from here, just across the other side of downtown Denver. It was a similar track in some ways. That, there were pluses and minuses to it, but it's certainly, as this weekend's event has turned to be a great outing, a great event all around. Just a lot of atmosphere here, a lot of kart fans. Certainly over the course of the year, the television viewership figures in this part of the world are amongst the highest in the country. So there's a lot of kart fans, and they're out here showing their support for kart this afternoon.
Good experience and a good opportunity too for Adrian Fernandez, because there is a substantial Hispanic community here in Denver. So for his Mexican sponsors, Tecate, Telmex, Quaker State, very valuable opportunity this, and it's great to see him run up in the top three. Dixon in the Coors Light car. And if you've just joined us, it will only be in that livery for this round. The Coors Brewing Company are Denver-based, and that was a thank you from Chip Ganassi himself, because they renewed their NASCAR deal with Chip. So he said, we'll do something special for you this round.
Yeah, that particular car, that particular chassis that Dixon is driving this weekend, in actual fact, is the same chassis taken to victory at Twin Ring Motegi earlier this year by Bruno Junqueira. So it's already got a bit of a history, and it's running well again this afternoon.
Speaking of running well, this guy has not put a foot wrong so far. I can't say that he hasn't put a foot wrong all weekend, because he did crash in Friday qualifying late in the session and brought out the red flags, and it was close enough to the end of the session that they brought out the checker as well. But he slammed the car on the outside of turn one into the tyre barrier, was very, very upset with himself and the whole situation. But he responded and bounced back in the best way possible yesterday with the quickest time, and grabbed his third pole of the season and his second in the last 3 races, and he's enjoying plenty of clear air, which is so important here in the Mile High City.
Certainly is. He really is doing an excellent job, and as you said, he did go off on Friday afternoon, and on Saturday the team decided to get their qualifying laps in early before the end of the session. He was probably in the pit lane about 4 or 5 minutes before the end of the session, so it's a bit of a gamble. Generally speaking, the track conditions get better as the session goes along, and faster times that will emerge, but this time they didn't, and he was able to hold on to that pole position.
Junqueira will be coming in this lap. There is the target Chip Ganassi team. Race leader in this lap. Up to turn 6, he's not too far away. There was a very significant press conference here this morning. Chris Pook and quite a few team owners. We will mention that after this round of pit stops, because pretty interesting and exciting news. Let's get ready for this first round of stops. Here is your race leader, Bruno Junqueira. He breaks left and comes into pit lane.
This is it. This is lap 32. This is the pit window 32 out of the 100. And there's a pit shuffle window on the left there. You can see the order in which they come into the pit, and when they leave, we'll show you the order as they go out.
3, 2, 1. The target team go to work. So too to the second one. Fernandez is in and out. Very swift work. And Junqueira gets the word to get out of here and go. Here comes Cristiano de Matter as well.
Go out, both go. Fernandez and his exit behind him.
Looks like Kenny Breck there has gone out ahead of Cristiano de Matter. Slow strop by Cristiano de Matter. There he is leaving the pits now, but lost quite a bit of ground. Certainly, Kenny Breck came in ahead of Cristiano de Matter, but I'd say he's increased his margin quite substantially as he comes out of the pits. Other than that, it seems no real change at the front of the order. We see Junqueira, Fernandez, Dixon, Nakano, Fittipaldi, the top 5 still emerging in the same positions, and all the way down the order as well. So we're pretty much status quo.
And the way that the pit shuffle works is, if there was any change, you would see the arrow that would indicate that. Michael Andretti has been serviced and the Motorola car is out after that spin earlier, and I can update you that he was reporting significant brake problems. And here is Paul Tracy stuck behind Mario Dominguez.
Yeah, but you can no doubt about it that Paul Tracy is going to try to make a move on Mario Dominguez on this outlap. Paul Tracy is generally speaking very, very good indeed on cold tyres, although he didn't show that on the first lap of the race. But I think you can it's going to be a pretty safe bet down into turn 5. You're going to see Tracy trying to make a move on Mario Dominguez.
Round the outside down into turn 5. He tries an alternative line, gets it crossed up and almost comes in contact with Mario Dominguez. Switches to the inside run up to turn 6.
Got a great run off the corner though, did Paul Tracy, and now you're going to see him brake as late as he possibly can on the outside line. But Mario Dominguez, great work there by the young Mexican, does a super job to fend off Paul Tracy. That is a great piece of driving by the youngster.
Into the very slow left-hand turn 8. They're coming up to complete the lap. Look at the opposite lock. Very slippery corner, that one. Everyone has been spinning there.
Brilliant stuff there by both these two. Paul Tracy did what he, going into turn 5, that huge wide corner, the mile-wide turn. Mario Dominguez did the right thing by staying to the inside line. Paul tried to go to the outside, cut across and get a run to the inside. He wasn't able to make a move. And now, coming into turn 4, can he make a move there? Yes, he can. Good stuff by Paul Tracy, and he finally manages to slither through.
And watch him drive away from the only rookie in this field.
Paul Tracy giving us heart failure here in the studio. We're on lap 35 then. We'll take a short break. The pit stops are all done and dusted under green. We rejoin the action in just a couple of minutes. At the Shell Grand Prix of Denver, Bruno Junqueira still leads from Adrian Fernandez, Scott Dixon, Shinji Nakano and Cristiano Fittipaldi. And we can rejoin the action now live at trackside.
Which is this big sporting complex right in the middle of the track. And then now down into turn 5. There's Nakano 4th, Fittipaldi 5th. That has not changed since the race started. And the word from the Fittipaldi camp, absolutely no problems in his stop. Things went to plan there. Can't say the same for his teammate though.
No, just a little bit slower, I think, than it should have been, but not much. I mean, he lost maybe a couple of seconds, and a couple of seconds could be crucial at the end of the day. But he's come out fairly strong since that pit stops, and he's closed up a little bit of that deficit to Kenny Breck. So it's all pretty much status quo. The only change amongst the whole field actually during that first round of pit stops was the two Team Rahal cars, with Jimmy Vasser get himself out of the pits ahead of his teammate Jourdain.
So up front, Bruno Junqueira continues to dominate, although his lead has come back substantially in this last lap. Fernandez has done a wonderful job fending off Scott Dixon. Dixon has been staying in that same area, pretty much the same margin between these two, lap after lap after lap. As we take a look at the Mexican's feet. Hard at work.
Great, so there you can see him working the brake and the throttle at the same time. That's his throttle pedal on the right-hand side and the brake on the left, so he left foot brakes, clearly does Adrian Fernandez. No need to use the clutch on the upshifts or the downshifts, although Adrian there was actually, you can hear now, you just, as the gear shifts there coming down through the gearbox, doesn't need to use the clutch. The shift without lift process on that car, on that Honda engine, takes care of all of that, and that's that Quaker State decal moving around on the left of the screen. That, of course, is the steering column.
The second place, Adrian Fernandez, as he reaches speeds up near 185 miles per hour, around about 295 kilometres per hour, and he maintains a very good second place. Speaking of maintaining position, it's nice to still see Kenny Brack in this race in 6th, where he started. He's had an enormous amount of DNFs this year, 7 to be precise, so Dario Franchitti is now equal with him with the amount of non-finishes. Look at Dixon, looks for an alternative line on the inside. This is the biggest challenge that last year's Rookie of the Year has put on Adrian Fernandez. Thought about it, but wasn't quite close enough. But certainly lets the Mexican know he is all over him.
Yeah, he certainly is, and I think Scott Dixon, he can see that Bruno's beginning to pull away a bit now. There's not much of a gap between the first and second place cars, or I should say not much change in the gap between the first two cars. It was around about 6 seconds, now it's out to 7.6.
The inaugural Shell Grand Prix of Denver is now 40 laps old. There's 60 to run here on the streets of downtown Denver. Wonderful day, great weekend. Look at this, there could be a pass for second. That was close. Dixon thought about it as Fernandez came across and had to lock them up, and he's lost some ground now. Up into turn 6. Must be a little frustrating because it looks like Dixon has got enough to get there with Fernandez and just hasn't had that opportunity to get past. We'll see. Takagi's sticking around. So too is Nakano and Fittipaldi. You get that feeling though, Jeremy, it's any moment now.
Yeah, you certainly do, and certainly I think also Toru Takagi is running a lot better now. He's in clean air there behind this battle for second and third. He is a lap down, the car number 5, behind Scott Dixon there, but he's certainly not holding up the 4th place car of Shinji Nakano, at least not at this stage. You can see there, here comes that trainer car, second, third there is Dixon, behind Dixon is Takagi, behind Dixon is Nakano, not far behind Nakano is Fittipaldi, then Brack and D'Amata.
So our race leader, Bruno Junqueira, was the pole sitter. He remains where he started. Fernandez remains where he started. Dixon was the first and the only early mover as he jumped up on Shinji Nakano to grab third, and he remains there. Back to 5th, Fittipaldi remains. There's Don Halliday calling the shots there and communicating with Adrian Fernandez.
He is the technical director and the co-team owner, along with Adrian Fernandez and Tom Anderson of that Fernandez Racing team, and Don Halliday has got a great setup for these two cars this weekend. He works in the cahoots with his fellow race engineer Martin Perret, who works with Shinji Nakano, and both of those cars running very, very strong here in Denver.
And let's not forget that Don was one of the keys to Kenny Brack's success last year in the Shell car at Team Rahal. The man also who worked with Dario Franchitti in that very successful 99 season.
Certainly did. He's had a lot of success over the years, has Don Halliday. He's designed several cars in his own right, the True Sports car, of course, going back there, and that was used later by Team Rahal, not to quite such good effect, but he's a very accomplished design engineer, is Don Halliday, and a lot of non-racing application technology that he is involved in as well. And he's a very, very smart guy, and he's really enjoying his time here with Fernandez Racing.
We go back through that field summary. Fittipaldi stays where he started. Brack on screen right now. He stays where he started. We talk about that he got out in front of D'Amata in the pit stop, but that was not in terms of an improvement in position. He simply just beat him out of pit lane. D'Amata stays where he started. Carpentier stays where he started. Likewise, Kanaan, and Vassar moves up one position, as Jeremy mentioned earlier, in that first round of pit stops. There's our championship leader, 55 points. The lead margin coming into this round as we focus again on the battle for second, and it's becoming more and more intense as the laps go on. This 22-year-old New Zealander is really starting to put the pressure on one of kart's stalwarts, Adrian Fernandez.
He seems to be struggling a bit, Fernandez. He's down now in the 64-second range. The race leader, Bruno Junqueira, he's lapping very consistently at around about 62, 63 seconds, high 62s, low 63s. And the last 2 or 3 laps, Adrian Fernandez down in the 1 minute 4, the 64-second range. And that's primarily as a result he's driving on his mirrors, just trying to make sure that he keeps Scott Dixon behind him.
Takagi hanging around there. Takagi is in fact the last car in this race and a lap down. We ride now with the Japanese driver. And you see the battle for second and third up ahead.
Yeah, just the last lap or so, Scott Dixon was just relented the pressure a little bit on Adrian Fernandez. He's not quite as close as he was before. Wonder whether, either he's decided, this is a waste of time, or to try and get away past him. Otherwise, maybe trying to lull Adrian into a false sense of security, let him pull out a little bit of a lead, and then try and charge up behind him and make a pass and catch Adrian Fernandez napping.
And Dixon has just radioed in to his team, Mark Paxton and the boys, and said, "This is a joke. He's going so slow, he's holding me up." Well, there's a fair margin between the two of them now. Fernandez seems to have crept away on that last lap. Have a look at it here, the run from 5 up to 6. And he's certainly not as close as what he was. This is race leader Bruno Junqueira.
And ahead of him is Michael Andretti, who is now running in 16th place. So we've got 17 of the 18 cars still running, and all 17 cars that started, or that completed the first lap, are still running. But Michael Andretti now in danger of going a lap down to the race leader Bruno Junqueira. Was that Mario Dominguez? Sorry, Michael Andretti is already 1 lap down, and it's now Mario Dominguez next in line, who also is about to go 1 lap down.
Cristiano De Mata has just got ahead of Kenny Brack. So whether Brack has run into some problems, and Brack is in. We hear that Brack is in the pits. There he is. So, second round of stops for the Swede.
That's very early for a pit stop. That's Tora Takagi making a pit stop. That's on schedule now for him, because he stopped out of sequence earlier on. Certainly an earlier than suspected stop for Kenny Brack, so we're not quite sure why that is. We'll try and find out for you. In the meantime, there's Tora Takagi back out on the racetrack, and in between, right behind Jourdain, and there is Aurel Servia finding a way past as well.
To give you an indication of how quick and how soon, look at Servia trying to get around Tora Takagi, how quickly that stop was for Kenny Brack. It was only 13 laps transpired since his original pit stop. So a very short period in between those stops for Kenny Brack, but the Swede is back out there now and back at it. Likewise, Tora Takagi. Junqueira now boasts a 10-second lead over Adrian Fernandez, and Dixon a second now behind the Mexican.
Bruno Junqueira then, the pole man, well and truly on his way to taking the Denver race here in Colorado. And you've got to say that Bruno Junqueira with a 10-second lead is going to take some catching. We'll take a break then and rejoin him leading this race in just a few moments. 100-lap kart Grand Prix of Denver. There are no changes to the race order, so let's get back to our commentators Jeremy Shaw and Lee Diffie.
Nice crowd in attendance. That may have been Fittipaldi getting past Shinji Nakano. We'll wait and see. It's a little hard to tell from here. We're right on halfway mark of the Shell Grand Prix of Denver. 50 laps down and 50 to go. And this is the front stretch. Here's your race leader. Almost 11 seconds in the lead now. It has been a very, very impressive drive so far from Bruno Junqueira.
Yeah, pretty cool, calm Sunday afternoon drive for this man, and so he's just under pressure from absolutely no one other than himself. It's certainly very easy to make a mistake here on this Denver street circuit. There's no room for error whatsoever. It's very, very bumpy in some sections. It's very, very fast in others, and you've got to be. There's no time to relax whatsoever. You've also got to keep an eye on your equipment as well. It's good to see it with 50 laps down. We've still got all 17 cars that completed the first lap are still running, and there was a lot of thought coming into this race that attrition was going to be very, very high.
And we've seen those first 50 laps all green.
And run at a very fast pace as well. 1 minute 2.584 last time around for the race leader, and that was less than 0.8 of a second slower than his best lap in qualifying yesterday.
Look at this, the battle continues. Dixon continues to smother Adrian Fernandez, but is yet to find a way through on the Mexican.
Tell you what, that pass you saw earlier on, you can just see behind Scott Dixon, it's Shinji Nakano there, is behind there, and I think the pass you saw down at the hairpin was Tora Takagi letting those cars go, because Tora Takagi was in between the third place, fourth place cars of Dixon and Nakano, and he's now not. You can see Nakano there beginning to close in now onto the back end of that Coors Light car of Scott Dixon.
So these two go at it as hard as they can and as hard as they've been going since the opening lap, but nobody can catch Junqueira. Look at that, more than 12 seconds in the lead. Incidentally, a report from the Target Chip Ganassi team of Kenny Brack that was absolutely intentional. No problems with Kenny's car. That was a strategical, tactical move. He was meant to pit then. They pulled him out of that running order and serviced him for the second time, and he's back out in the mix. Now, we've got a report from Fernandez, Jeremy, of high tyre pressures on the 51 car.
Yeah, they have tyre pressure sensors on these cars. As the cars are going around the pits, so all the data from the car or from the engine and even from tyre pressures are relayed back to the pits by real-time telemetry. So they know in the pits that those tyre pressures on the car of Adrian Fernandez have built up a little bit more than they had expected. So when he comes in for next pit stop, they'll make a slight adjustment to that. They'll put a little bit less nitrogen. They use nitrogen in these tyres, not just regular air, because nitrogen doesn't build up more air pressure than regular air does, and particularly at this altitude. So they'll take a little bit of air out before his next round of pit stops on that next set of Bridgestone Potenza tyres.
If you've joined us late, welcome to the Shell Grand Prix of Denver. We have lost just one of the 18 cars, and that was last weekend's winner, Dario Franchitti. He is out, and he went out on the opening lap. Collision with his teammate. As you can imagine, he is in a filthy mood, and there'll be some pretty heated words down in that pit at the end of the race. You're watching the battle between second and third, Fernandez and Dixon. This has been going on for a long, long time. Now here's some interesting information. Apparently Chip Ganassi is having a bit of a go at the kart officials. Dominguez has held up Junqueira, and apparently he's talking to them about this situation between Fernandez and his driver, Scott Dixon. We're now over the halfway mark of the Shell Grand Prix of Denver. Race leader Bruno Junqueira picks up a bonus point for the most laps led. No one will lead more laps than him today, so that goes in hand with his bonus championship point for pole position. He is clearly now outright third in this championship, and with Franchitti out of this race, and if he remains where he is, he will leapfrog Franchitti and go back up into second.
Yeah, meanwhile, there was Cristiano D'Amato. You can see the from Christian Fittipaldi there, the yellow and green car, back to this black car of Cristiano D'Amato. Those are in 5th and 6th place, so D'Amato has moved up one position over where he qualified. That's a few laps, so that was Cristiano D'Amato we're hearing there. Was it 4 laps before he makes a pit stop? So he's that'll be a little bit earlier than he would otherwise need to. He needs to come in on lap 64 next time round. You have to pit every 32 laps, and D'Amato now is going to try and put the hammer down here, try to close up a little bit on Christian Fittipaldi before he makes that next pit stop.
Race leader. Is it? No, that's actually Kenny Brack. Brack is back in 12th position, but pitted on lap 45, so he can go all the way to 77 before he has to stop again.
That's the good news. The bad news is he'd have to make one more pit stop than the other guys, so I'm not quite sure that's going to quite hear what he said there, but that is the pit call to Kenny Brack, who is running now, as you say, in 12th place, and he's rounding there the turn 5 hairpin, and that was his best lap of the race so far, a 62.4 for Kenny Brack, and that in actual fact is the fastest lap of the race.
So Brack is flying in some clear space out by himself.
Actually, it's not according to my records. According to our chart here, the fastest lap was 62.415 by Bruno Junqueira early on. Kenny Brack there, 62.469. So a little bit of an anomaly there on the timing and scoring system. But whatever it is, it was certainly a very good lap by Kenny Brack. And, maybe that will pan out in his favour. Here's a battle. That was another battle there at the back of the field between Dominguez and Andretti. They're both one lap down and battling over 15th and 16th places.
Fairly unusual place to see Michael Andretti, that's for sure, in the Motorola entry. It's been a fairly unhappy weekend for Paul Tracy and Dario Franchitti. We know the result with Franchitti now. And just repeating something for those of you around the world who may have been in a commercial break, that Chip Ganassi is not all that pleased with the kart officials, and he has had discussions with them about Dominguez, who held up this man, Bruno Junqueira, earlier, and he's asking about the Fernandez-Dixon situation as well.
Nice try, Chip, but I mean, that's a battle for position for second and third when Dominguez was holding guys up. Yeah, he was blocking around, and, you know, I don't think there's any reason to suggest that Fernandez is blocking Scott Dixon. He's maintaining a sensible line. He's driving as fast as he feels prudent at this stage in a race, and he's able to keep Scott Dixon behind him. But what the heck, nothing ventured, nothing gained, Chip.
New fastest lap to Tony Kanaan, a 1:02.0. Started 9th, he currently runs 8th. That's mainly due to the fact that Brack pulled out of the equation and pitted out of sequence from the remainder.
And that lap by Tony Kanaan, 1 minute 2.022, actually faster than he qualified. His fastest qualifying lap, a 62.184, as we see Michael Andretti in for routine service. That's his second pit stop. And Tony Kanaan was actually quicker than that on the Saturday morning practice session, but he wasn't able to duplicate that in the afternoon. He therefore slipped back after being fastest of all on Saturday morning. Tony Kanaan slipped back to 9th on the grid, and there is that routine service completed by Michael Andretti, and he will now fall to 17th place.
For those of the drivers that came in on lap 32, which is the majority of the field, they must all pit within the next 7 laps. They can go to lap 64. It is a 32-lap pit window for these compulsory pit stops that have been implemented in the 2002 Kart FedEx Championship Series.
And there is Tony Kanaan, another fastest lap last time around, 61.877. So all of a sudden, Tony Kanaan's car has really come to him. He's reveling in the handling of it now. That 61.877, that would have been good enough for a position on row 2 of the grid had he managed it yesterday. Now he's running in 8th place, is Tony Kanaan. He's closing the gap to Patrick Carpentier in 7th, but he's still about, 6 seconds behind Patrick Carpentier. That is Tony Kanaan in 8th place.
And this man, Bruno Junqueira, 12.1 seconds in the lead. That is a substantial lead margin down into turn 5 again, as he and his respective team within the whole Target Ganassi organisation plan their next stop coming up very, very soon. It's still Fernandez second, it's still Dixon third, Nakano, Fittipaldi, D'Amato the top 6, then Patrick Carpentier, who has had a much stronger race than his teammate Alex Tagliani, who's virtually been invisible this week. Tagliani is back in 13th, didn't qualify all that well, and pretty much stays where he started.
Yeah, Patrick Carpentier once again has clearly had the upper hand over Alex Tagliani. Carpentier, as we said earlier on, was really going quickly yesterday in qualifying. That players team really struggled with those Reynard chassis on Friday. They were 16th and 18th in the first qualifying session. Just some fine-tuning changes, nothing particularly dramatic, said Bruce Ashmore, the technical director of team players, but it really transformed the car, and Patrick Carpentier was absolutely delighted with it in qualifying yesterday, and he's much, much quicker than Alex Tagliani pretty much all weekend.
This has been an interesting race as far as that the entire distance so far, 2/3 of the race distance we're now at, totally green, and this is not what everyone expected. There was talk of, as Servier is in for his next stop, there was talk of mass yellows, maybe even some red flags, big crashes, contact with the wall, and we certainly haven't seen that yet. We definitely saw that yesterday in the final round of the year for the Kart Toyota Atlantic Championship, incidentally, which American John Fogarty won. Congratulations to him.
He did a great job, did the Californian yesterday. He started third on the grid. He really needed to win the race in order to beat Michael Valianti from Canada, who had a 6-point lead coming into the final round. Valianti qualified 6th, and he crashed. He spun out halfway through the race while trying to chase John Fogarty, who had got up into the lead. A couple of great passes, and Fogarty went on to win the race and win the championship. Great work by the Californian, and he's working hard to try and find himself a ride in the Kart FedEx Championship Series for the 2003 season.
And at this stage of the season, there's always a lot of talk about the upcoming season and where is the next new star of kart coming from. Well, I can tell you that there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of speculation, there's a lot of hype as Vassar is in for his next stop surrounding Michael Valiante, the young Canadian. We'll stay tuned for more on that. The Rahal team released Jimmy Vassar.
That might have been a bad idea with Michelle. Let's go, give me some light.
2 5th places in the last 2 races. Jimmy seems to have bounced back of late. Let's see what he can put together today. He's been running consistently in 10th his teammate Michel Jourdain Jr. has pretty much been matching him for lap times. But they've stayed in 10th and 11th for quite some time now. 61 laps down, here's your race leader, Bruno Junqueira. We will see everybody in within the next 3 laps.
A good lap there by Adrian Fernandez, incidentally. Last time around, Bruno Junqueira a little bit slower. He had to once again put a lap on Taurus Takagi. Well, you see, that seemed to be fairly regular occurrence this afternoon, but he has got past there. And Adrian Fernandez, meanwhile, turned his fastest lap of the race so far, a 1 minute 2.438. So a good lap there. Scott Dixon, however, yeah, he can match that. 62.386 for Scott Dixon, as that battle for second and third remains as intense as ever.
Edging ever so close to the front runners coming in. Here is Alex Tagliani, 13th when he pitted, as the players' team go to work. And he gets released. Fairly quick and slick stop. Tagliani coming into this round at 8th in the championship, or tied for 7th, whichever way you want to look at it. Fernandez, the second place car, is in. So this is the first of the true front running cars we are seeing serviced for the second time of these mandatory pit stops. And he is gone. That was a fairly slick stop. Who have we got in the wall? That is Patrick Carpentier, we believe.
That's a turn 5, so that's a mistake there by Patrick Carpentier, apparently. And will that bring out a full course caution? Interesting to me that Fernandez should come into the pits early than he really needed to. He could have got another 2 laps, but we're hearing he was having problems with the handling of the car. He wanted to get in as soon as he can. But now Scott Dixon, if he can turn a couple of quick laps with that clear track ahead of him, that will give Dixon the opportunity to move ahead of Fernandez when he comes out of the pits himself.
And the word is from the Fernandez camp that those high tyre pressures were simply getting too much, and they called Adrian in. As Tony Kanaan, they come down into that cautioned area. You can see the waved yellows, and off to the right there, the Card Simple Green safety team take care of Patrick Carpentier. And we do not go to a full course yellow. It was simply a local down at turn 5. We continue to run green. And earlier in this race, Carpentier had reported some gearbox problems. We're not 100% sure at this stage if that was what caused that situation. Kanaan ducks in. So we wait to see Bruno Junqueira, Dixon, Nakano, Fittipaldi and D'Amato to make their second mandatory stop. Here's Kanaan.
Out of 6th place. There's a Monan Racing Honda-powered Lola in the pit lane there. Looks like pretty much routine service there. Very good stop. See Paul Tracy's crew waiting in the foreground as well. And Christian Fittipaldi's behind. Meanwhile, here is the race leader, Bruno Junqueira, for pit stop number 2, right on schedule, lap 64.
Here is the pit shuffle again.
For Dixon, you're plus 10 to Dixon now. You're plus 10 to Dixon. Hurry up down here. It's an open in.
Here and say plus 10 to Dixon. That's the margin.
Okay, it's going to be quick. Be ready. Ready? Go, 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 go.
It's the radio of race leader Bruno Junqueira. He is in and out. He is done. D'Amato in the foreground. There is teammate Christian Fittipaldi. He is gone.
You see the smoke out of the radiators there. I think a lot of the teams were planning on squirting some fluid, some water into the radiators before that would join those routine pit stops. Oh, there's Nakano. He stalled it in the pits again. He did that last week. Look at the frustration from Shinji Nakano. He did that last week in Montreal where he was having a good run.
And he was in the top 4 for the entire 64 laps, and he has just, well, perhaps kissed that goodbye. Tracy is serviced. The Team Cool Green guys get him done and out. And there you can see the pit shuffle and the green arrows up for Fittipaldi and D'Amato. And look at this. Absolute frustration for Nakano and his team. Steve Reagan and the boys. Whoa. Temperatures and tempers, I think, will be a little frayed down there. Look at Nakano. Maybe he didn't stall it. Maybe there's another problem, Jeremy.
Maybe there is another problem on that car, certainly. And when you do, yeah, it sounds like they shut off the engine on the car number 52. Boy, what a shame for Nakano. He done a great job all weekend long, and he was perfect in the race he was up until that point. It looks like some kind of a problem.
So, Bruno Junqueira continues to dominate this race. as he has from the green flag. Kart officials, Jim Swintel, didn't waste any time some 65 laps ago. The field were a little bit higgledy-piggledy, but he said, let's go racing anyway. And they avoided incidents. Whoa, big lock-up from Junqueira. That's a turn 6.
Yes, a big mistake there by Junqueira. And is the pressure getting to him? Who is in second place? Yes, it is Scott Dixon. After making that second round of pit stop, Dixon got out in a second place. Last time around, he was over a second quicker than this man, Bruno Junqueira. He made up a lot of ground. And now, is he going to be able to get closer? Plus 7.6, says Bill Pappas over the radio to Bruno Junqueira. Got to keep your head about yourself, Bruno, now. If you make a mistake, you're going to put it into the wall. He got away with it last time round. There's another mistake there from Jimmy Vasser. It's down to the hairpin in turn 5.
There's Oriol Servia, Tora Takagi, and it's over. The day is done for Shinji Nakano. And here is Vasser and Tracy on track. And that margin, I can tell you up front, from Junqueira to Dixon was 7.6 the previous lap. It's now come down 1.4 seconds to 6.2. Vasser and Tracy come onto the front straight. And it was Oriol Servia who put the move on Jimmy.
Yes, it was. So good work there by Oriol Servia. He's now up inside the top 10. He was running 11th before this round of pit stops. Of course, he made up one of those positions with Nakano's problem, and then the other one when he got past Jimmy Vasser.
So the revised order after that last round of stops: Junqueira, Dixon, Fernandez, Fittipaldi, D'Amato, and we have an update from the pits that it was a gear shift lever for Nakano. Has forced him out of this race while he was running in his equal career best result. He finished 4th at Toronto. He was in 4th today. He seemed to be comfortably holding Christian Fittipaldi at bay. But the day is done for the Japanese driver.
And that'll be heartbreak for Shinji Nakano. There he is. He can't believe his bad luck, and some sort of a problem there with the gear shift linkage. We'll try and have a word with him in a few moments, perhaps when he recovers his composure there. But he's certainly done a nice job. And if the gear lever just came off in his hand there, which is certainly isn't unprecedented. In actual fact, in yesterday's Toyota Atlantic race, it happened to Joey Hand, a very talented young American driver. So he knows what that frustration is all around. Here, meanwhile, here's the man in second place, Scott Dixon. He's got himself ahead of Adrian Fernandez during that round of pit stops, as we suggested he might do, and you can see there's no sign of Fernandez behind him. He's put a lot of gap in between himself and the Mexican already. Talking to Mexicans, in front of Scott Dixon, another Mexican, the laps car of Mario Dominguez in 13th place.
Are we seeing Scott Dixon race towards his second Champ Car career victory? We'll find out in about 32 laps time. Junqueira leads, but that margin is diminishing. Here is Mario Dominguez. He is in between Bruno Junqueira and Scott Dixon on the streets of Denver, the inaugural Shell Grand Prix of Denver. And the city has put on a mighty fine event.
Bruno Junqueira still leads from Scott Dixon's challenge. Adrian Fernandez is the Christian Fittipaldi in 4th, and Cristiano D'Amato, the series leader, in 5th place. That's how it stands. We'll take another break. See you in a moment. The Grand Prix of Denver, Bruno Junqueira still leads, but Scott Dixon is now just under 7 seconds behind him. Let's get back to the track live.
And keep in mind, Dixon had to negotiate Mario Dominguez. It's now come back out to just under 8 seconds. So Junqueira has responded. Either Junqueira has responded, which he has. His last lap was half a second faster than Dixon, but Dixon was thinking about getting past Mario Dominguez.
And this time around, lap 72 for Bruno Junqueira, his fastest lap of the race so far, 62.2 seconds for the race leader. Dixon, another half a second slower, so that gap out now to 8.4 seconds. But a similar gap back now to Adrian Fernandez, and then in 4th place is Fittipaldi, who's closing very rapidly now on Adrian Fernandez. And then next in line, that man, Cristiano D'Amato, is up into 5th place, not far behind Christian Fittipaldi.
Our colleague Alex Sabine riding the radios, and the latest report from Ganassi is that Junqueira is saying the car is fine. I can't report anything wrong. Everything's running smoothly at the moment.
There is Philip on. That was a glance at the two Newman Haas cars further back down the order. There is Paul Tracy now in 11th place. Just ahead of Tracy is Jimmy Vasser. Ahead of Vasser is Servia. And then ahead of Servia is this man, Michel Jourdain Jr., who's had an amazing streak going. He's finished in the points in every race this season.
Marvellous effort. Incidentally, talking to the Team Rahal guys, Tom Blattler and the team down there, they say that this car, Jeremy, has turned out obviously different colours, but the same design as Bobby Rahal's Miller Genuine Draft car of the early 90s.
Yeah, that's true. It does look vaguely familiar, doesn't it? I wondered what that was. Of course, that was the black and white car. This is the red and white car of Michel Jourdain Jr. He too is using a different chassis this weekend. Talked about Scott Dixon with the different colours on his car. He's running the car that Bruno Junqueira used to great effect by winning at Motegi earlier in this year. That car that is now running by Michel Jourdain Jr. New chassis there because they damaged their car over the curbs last weekend in Montreal.
And a very quick lap that time around by this man, Bruno Junqueira. He is down into the 101s. Very impressive stuff. And he is continuing to extend that lead. Wow, it's blown out by nearly a second on that last lap. It's now back out to 9.3 seconds. So he has responded to Scott Dixon's challenge. Flying down the back straight, heading down towards what they call mile wide. This corner is 3 times as wide as the rest of the track. The majority of the track is about 40 feet in width. That particular area there, 120 feet. You can see the little parking zones there off to the right-hand side. It's a mass car park down there in between the Pepsi Center, which hosts basketball and ice hockey, and over between there in Invesco Field, which is the home to the Denver Broncos. Massive area down here.
Yeah, and also the Six Flags amusement park is right adjacent to that part of the racetrack as well. So it's a great overhead view there through the final 2 corners. You can see the transporter area in the middle to the left. This is the start-finish straight. This is our race leader, Bruno Junqueira. Lap number 75 completed out of 100. So 3/4 distance, a little bit more conservative lap time around, 62.3, but he still extends that lead a little bit more over the second place car of Scott Dixon.
This drive has been very impressive, and it's going to be good enough to put him back up into second in the championship order. It may not have been the most stellar weekend for our series leader, Cristiano De Matta. We haven't seen a great deal of him today, but he is running in a strong 5th, valuable points. And he came into this round with a 55-point lead anyway. So it's all about finishing for De Matta. Keep scoring points and make it hard for the rest of the field. When the day is done today, we have just 5 events to go. The Rockingham 500 in Northamptonshire as Vasser and Takagi come in. That's in a fortnight's time. We then have the Gold Coast race. We've got the Miami Street race. We've got Fontana and, of course, Mexico City.
That's the final pit stop there for Jimmy Vasser. He gives up a 10th place there to make that final stop. Toru Takagi, he's still a lap down in 15th. He does likewise.
So they continue on. Fastest lap of the race still belongs to this man, Tony Kanaan. And that was done quite some time ago. He continues on in the Monan Honda.
Yeah, he's running in 7th place now. He's behind Kenny Brack, who's going to have to come in for another pit stop. Actually, next time around, I think he's about due another stop. He made his last pit stop on lap 45, so by lap 77, which is the next lap, Kenny Brack will need to come onto pit lane. So Tony Kanaan, that'll move him up from 7th to 6th.
A report from the Vistion Patrick Racing team that Oriol Servia may be experiencing some problems with second gear. We'll monitor that and have more for you. And speaking of that team, I had an interesting rumour today, Jeremy, that Townsend Bell, the former driver of that car, may actually be jumping in the Minardi Formula 1 car for a test soon.
Another American, Brian Herter, has also already had a very impressive test for Minardi, and I know that Paul Stoddart, the team owner at the Minardi operation, is very keen to have an American in his squad in the not too distant future. So you've got a couple to choose from now with Townsend Bell and Brian Herter, as we see there Kenny Brack on schedule, making his final pit stop of the day.
So here is the Swede. Let's watch the team go to work. Kenny doesn't seem to be all that pleased. He's shaking his head. Kenny has done on lap 77. Well, we thought, and it was generally discussed amongst pit lane and folks in pit lane in the paddock, that there'd be a high rate of attrition in this race today, but that hasn't really been the case. We've only lost 3 cars. Dario Franchitti, Patrick Carpentier to a gearbox problem, and Shinji Nakano was the latest victim of this race. Shinji, it's a real shame to see you out after such a strong run.
Yeah, it's a shame what happened. You know, I don't know exactly what happened, but feeling is exactly the same problem I had in Montreal. So basically, you know, the team did a good job and put everything together after that point. But well, it's a tough luck.
We must say congratulations on your brilliant qualifying effort, career best qualifying effort. You were running 4th for the majority of the race. You've shown this year that you've really got a thing for street circuits.
Yeah. I think that team's done a good job, and I had a good car in this racetrack. I think maybe having a good car at the street circuit. Fortunately, I think we have two more street circuit races, so we have some more chances. So let's hope for the next one.
All right, Shinji Nakano, thanks for your time. We'll see you in England in a couple of weeks.
All right, thanks.
We continue on to lap 80 now. Just 21 to go. And Oriol Servia in 8th position. No more updates on that potential gearbox problem concerning second gear for the Spaniard. He's got Paul Tracy hot on him at the moment.
Yeah, if he doesn't have a problem with second gear, he's going to have a problem with Paul Tracy at the moment. Paul's caught up to the tail end of that Vistion car of Oriol Servia. There it is, the battle for 8th place. You can see now just half a second in him, just 3 or 4 car lengths between those two, and Paul Tracy has made up quite a bit of ground on Oriol since over the course of the last 10 or 12 laps. And looking at the lap times now, that time a 63 flat for Oriol Servia. Paul Tracy actually a little bit slower, so Oriol's running about a half a second off the pace of the leaders. Talking of the leaders, Bruno Junqueira, he's lapping still in the 62s with the odd 63 thrown in there. Scott Dixon, meanwhile, he said his fastest lap of the race so far last time around, a 62.2.
That margin is back to 8 seconds, just over, between Junqueira, Dixon. Fernandez maintains his 3rd.
But only just, because Fittipaldi is now right on his tail. There's less than a second between those two, and Fernandez now has fallen a full 15 seconds behind the second place car of Scott Dixon. There is Scott Dixon. As I say, he just turned his fastest lap of the race last time around, a 62.2. This time a little bit slower, 62.4. The gap from himself to the race leader, Bruno Junqueira, is 8.1 seconds.
The only time we've seen Fernandez on the podium this year was when he finished runner-up at Milwaukee. And a podium would go down very, very well to the enormously experienced Champ Car driver, the only owner driver in the field. What can this young guy come up with? Dixon, can he put the pressure more and more on Bruno Junqueira, his teammate? Well, the margin remained exactly the same, or pretty much the same, Jeremy, on that last lap. So he's holding steady.
Certainly is, and he's certainly looking for his best result of the season is Scott Dixon. It's been a pretty disappointing year for him. He's had a lot of mechanical problems, particularly in the last few races, and he's only had one top 5 finish so far this year, so a second place will be just great for him. He just needs to build a bit of momentum towards the end of this season. If he's looking, he's looking for a ride for next year. He wants to stay in this series if he possibly can, and he wants to show that he deserves it.
Here is Fittipaldi. Let's tune into this battle, because this is starting to heat up. It is the battle for the final step of the podium. Fittipaldi, he's been pretty good all weekend actually, and there is his teammate Cristiano D'Amato right with them. So 3rd, 4th and 5th all running together. 3rd, 4th and 5th running pretty much together, as you say, and Cristiano D'Amato, he certainly made some ground towards Fittipaldi, as Fittipaldi has made ground toward Fernandez. So that battle really now beginning to shape up. It is the battle for 3rd place. Tora Takagi just in front of these guys. He has absolutely been lost this weekend. He's 2 laps down in this race, qualified last, and sadly for the Walker Racing team, he just hasn't been on it.
There is the championship leader there, Cristiano Damata. Second, third, fourth and fifth places there. Meanwhile, Scott Dixon, another good lap for him. Down into the 61s, he becomes the third driver to dip below the 62 second barrier. 61.879 last time around for Scott Dixon, as compared to Bruno Junqueira's 62.3. So he pulled away a half a second closer last time around. But with less than 18 laps to go, Bruno can afford to take things fairly easily.
Keep in mind that these front-running cars must stop one more time. That is Junqueira, that's Dixon, Fernandez, Fittipaldi, Damata, etc. They all must come in one more time in the next 17 laps. Talk about pressure on the pit crews, especially for these guys, Fernandez and Newman Haas. We know how good Christian Fittipaldi's team is. They have serviced him very, very well this year. And Jeremy, something we haven't mentioned for a long time, but pretty interesting. Once CART slapped down that new rule of a $5,000 fine for any stray wheels flying off. We haven't seen it, strangely enough.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? The teams, they work so hard on their pit stops to try and shave away just tenths of a second. Maybe that's enough to be able to make a pass in the pit lane. And they just do anything they can to make those pit stops quicker and quicker and quicker. Now they've decided, once CART decided to put their foot down if there were any miscues in the pit lane. Now they've not got to work so much on getting the shaving those extra few tenths away, but just making sure they don't make a mistake.
Another lap in the books, and Adrian Fernandez has had one of his strongest drives and strongest weekends of the year. The man who started this 2002 season in the best possible way in his home country, one of two home races, started from pole. They couldn't believe it that Adrian was on the #1 position. The crowd thoroughly enjoyed seeing that. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to convert that great qualifying into a good race result. As I mentioned earlier, one podium for Adrian this year. He is fighting for a second.
Yeah, he's down in 15th place in the points there, and you can see him coming through this tight section of track. You can see how bumpy it is. You can see that steering wheel really moving around as he comes on to the fastest point of the racetrack. That's the Six Flags Amusement Park off to the right-hand side. And even though Fittipaldi managed to catch up, or pretty much catch up to Adrian Fernandez, that gap now is pretty much stabilised at between 7 or 8 car lengths. And there is Cristiano Damata, meanwhile, just slinking along there in 5th place. And
16 laps left to go then. We're looking at the series leader, Cristiano Damata, and he's making up places. In 5th place currently, but grabbing a hatful of points at the moment. He may well extend his lead after all today. We'll take a break, back in a couple of minutes. It's all action then in Denver at the moment. We'll get more from that in a moment. As you were away, we had an accident down into the turn. It's splash and dash time in pit lane. Last chance. Oriel Servi has been in. Jimmy Vass has been in while you're away. Let's get back to the track live now for the update.
The final time.
Good work there by Target Chip Ganassi Racing. That's Simon Hodgson, the guys look after that car. Here's Christian Fittipaldi. He was running in 3rd place. He is in the pits. Oh no! The air jack system has failed on that car. Oh no! The pneumatic hose came out of the back. They dropped the car, and just a disaster. Look at the frustration there by Kevin Chambers and the boys on that car.
Guys, wake up.
Wake up, guys. That was.
Now, hustle, fast, fast, fast.
Whoa, things are happening down there in pit lane like you wouldn't believe. And here is our race leader, Bruno Junqueira, is in, and we are under full course caution. Full course caution due to that Takagi and Dominguez incident, and here is Junqueira. Let's listen.
Okay, you ready? Go, go, go.
Wow.
Okay, Cassidy.
8 seconds for Junqueira. I can tell you it was in something around the 7-second margin for Dixon. So the Ganassi team are on it. But what about the Newman Haas team, Jeremy?
Yeah, and here's.
Hit your marks, Chris.
Hit your marks, Chris. Stay cool and calm and collected here. They're going to make it look like there's no rushing there in those guys. A great pit stop there by Newman Haas Racing for the Cristiano Damata, the race leader, the championship leader, I should say. And those guys have just got so much experience on that crew.
Pack up as quick as you can now.
Perfect work.
Still under yellow. Scott Dixon's team serviced him very, very well. And there is Bruno Junqueira. Is it Junqueira or is it Brack up ahead? And the Simple Green safety team clearing up that situation down there at turn 6. As the field come on through. Still a bit of a mystery as to what happened there with Takagi and Mario Dominguez. No word on that. And if it was caught on camera, we would have seen it by now. An interesting story from the Newman Haas pit is that this man here, it's reported, Christian Fittipaldi, actually came in a lap early.
Fancy he might have seen those two cars spun off the road and he thought, right, this is my time to come into the pits. And here's a replay of what happens as Toru Takagi trying to make a move on Mario Dominguez. He gets down 3/4 of the way alongside, I suppose, at turn 6, and a collision there as Dominguez turns into the corner. I think either of them could or should have avoided that one. Here's a replay again from on board with Toru Takagi. You can see him here. He now dives down to the inside. As we said earlier on, he's the last of the late breakers, but you know, that's way too late to be trying to make a move there, particularly when it was a battle. No, I don't think it was a battle for position. I think Takagi was one lap behind Dominguez, so completely uncalled for there by Toru Takagi. Dominguez was just turning into his line as normal, and as he turned in, Takagi certainly was nowhere near alongside him. I'm going to pin the blame, I hate to say it, but once again on Toru Takagi. The good news is that Dominguez was able to keep going. Bad news is he's fallen, he's now running in 14th place, so he's back behind Michael Andretti. He had been ahead of Mikey.
And I have to say that was quite reminiscent of the Takagi-Andretti incident in Vancouver. Very, very similar. So Mario Dominguez leaves pit lane for the final time, and we have just 10 laps left to run here on the streets of Denver, and it's the first caution of the race. We have gone almost the entire distance green, and it was only due to that pretty awkward situation that we have come under this full course caution for the first time. The revised order after that round of pit stops.
There's Toru Takagi. He's out of his car and looking ruefully through the fence. He's kept his helmet on. I don't think he's any danger of right there of being hit by Mario Dominguez, but he probably will be when he gets back to the pit, I think. And that car now being craned out of the way. That's out to a safe location now. Only going to be another lap or so, I think, before we're going to go green, and probably an 8 or 9 lap dash to the finish line. And there's a couple of cars right now that are between the pace car and the race leaders. Certainly the two Team Rahal cars, and I think Oriol Servia are in between those two, so they will have to be waved past. I think you can hear some cars there going at full speed. Another look at this great crowd here in Denver. There's cars that were almost a lap down being waved past the pace car. They will now pull around to the tail end of the lead lap, and then we'll be back to green, and we'll see whether Scott Dixon has anything for Bruno Junqueira.
We have got 11 cars running on the lead lap with 9 laps to go, and the revised order after that last round is Junqueira, Dixon, DeMatta, Fernandez 4th, Fittipaldi 5th. You can see how costly that was for Christian. Kanaan 6th, Brack is 7th, Tracy is 8th, Jourdain is 9th, Vassar is 10th, and Servia is 11th. Tagliani is in the points in 12th, however he is a lap down. Likewise Andretti, Dominguez some 3 laps down, and that's it. 4 cars out of this race, Takagi, Nakano, Carpentier, and Dario Franchitti.
And that's a lot better than we'd hoped earlier on. This is on board now with Adrian Fernandez. He's fallen to 4th place as a result of making that pit stop rather earlier than the guys he was dicing with, both Fittipaldi and Cristiano DeMatta. He just luckily just to lose 1 place there to DeMatta. He didn't lose another place to Fittipaldi because of Fittipaldi's miscue there in the pit lane. So as you say, Junqueira, Dixon, DeMatta, and then Fernandez now in 4th place ahead of Fittipaldi. And that field has been reset. The cars that were between the pace car and the race leader have been told to run around to the back of the field. There is Tony Kanaan there. He's running in 6th place. There's Brack and Tracy. They're the lapped car of Mario Dominguez, and the other guys are still trying to catch up at the tail end of that pack.
You have to say the sensible drive of the day goes to championship leader Cristiano DeMatta. He's going to pick up plenty more points to help in his championship chase.
This time, 1 finger this time.
And we will be getting back under green very, very soon. But you'd have to say the stars of the day belong to this man here on screen. Chip Ganassi's Young Chargers, Bruno Junqueira and Scott Dixon.
Now remember, we can't see the green, so you're going to have to go just boot it out of the last corner. 10-4.
You're hearing and looking at Chip Ganassi communicating to Junqueira.
And he's saying, remember, we can't see the green flag. And the reason for that is the other side of the pit wall there is a good bit higher than where they are seated on their stands in pit lane. So they cannot see the green flag being waved. Up to Bruno to set the pace on his own.
This is exciting stuff. It's going to be an out-and-out battle between the two target Chip Ganassi cars and that Coors Light Silver Bullet of Scott Dixon. There he is, the young New Zealander. He has been podium-less this year in what has been a pretty bizarre year for this young man's career. He started it with Pac West Racing, which took on the new name of PWR Championship Racing. That was a carry-on from last year. Same team he began his champ car career with, and certain financial issues there with that particular organisation, and Chip Ganassi was very quick to pick him up and say, yep, I'll take you on board in a third car. We've got the resources, we've got the personnel, we think we can handle you.
So you saw there as the field gets ready for the restart in between the two target cars at the front of the field. Bad news for Scott Dixon. That is the lapped car of Alex Tagliani, the third of the target cars. There he is Kenny Brack. He's in 7th place. He set the fastest lap of the race just before we went to yellow.
Green flag, you can hear it from race control. Here we go. And Bruno Junqueira will try and break away as quickly as he can. The objective for Scott Dixon is to get past Tagliani as quickly as he possibly can and try and hunt down this man. 7 laps to go from here. The inaugural Shell Grand Prix of Denver. We're in the closing stages, and look at Paul Tracy is fighting as aggressively as he was right on lap 1 when he collided with his teammate Dario Franchitti.
Yeah, he's on the tail of Kenny Brack, and as we said, Kenny Brack set the fastest lap of the race before this one and only caution period of the race. And look at the gap there that Bruno Junqueira has already pulled out over the lapped car of Tagliani, and Scott Dixon unable to find a way past the player's car. There's the battle for 5th and 6th with Fittipaldi and Canaan side by side through turn 5.
They hold position, no change there, but Tony Canaan is really working Fittipaldi very hard, and Brack is in behind those guys, ready to pounce at the first opportunity. So coming around to complete the first lap after the restart through the very tight 90-degree turn 8, the short run up to turn 9. Look at Fittipaldi, he got the car sideways there, plenty of opposite lock through the 9th and final turn and onto the main straight. 6 laps to run from here, and it's a 2.5 second lead for Bruno Junqueira. No change in position there. There is Michel Jourdain Jr. set for yet another points finish, and here's Dixon. Look at this, he tries to get through on Tagliani, he does. Nice work.
Excellent work there, and good work to Tagliani to leave them room, and Cristiano D'Amato also finds a way past, and now Tagliani will get himself completely out of the way for this battle for the top positions. Adrian Fernandez also passed in 4th place.
So now it's an out-and-out, clear, clean battle. As Fittipaldi and Canaan get past Tagliani, it's a clear battle between Junqueira and Dixon. 5.5 laps left to run on this 1.6 mile street circuit. And Fittipaldi fighting for as many championship points as he can get. That mistake in pit lane by his team when they dropped the car before the left rear was on was enormously costly, and I can tell you what, Dixon is on the charge here. It's come down from 2.4 seconds to 1.9, so he is eating into Bruno Junqueira's lead. Look at this young man go. He completed more laps than anyone in the Kart FedEx Championship Series last year. The former Dayton Indy Lights champion, now in his 2nd year of champ cars. He's failed to finish, and certainly not always by his own fault, failed to finish on the podium this year. He's in line for his first podium. He only has 1 career victory. Can he make it 2 today? Well, the man who is in front is a very, very dogged competitor, and he will make it hard for this young New Zealander.
He certainly will, and Bruno Junqueira, he's had heartbreak in several races this season in the closing stages, so he's just going to want to make sure now he doesn't make any mistakes and he doesn't overwork that equipment. But look, that gap has really come down, as you say. Scott Dixon has got the hammer down, and he is closing rapidly on Bruno Junqueira.
1.9 seconds last time around. It's down to just 9/10 of a second. Dixon has taken 1 full second out of Bruno Junqueira's lead within the last lap. The Kiwi is flying through the very tight, twisty section through turns 1, 2 and 3. Now they put the foot to the floor through turn 4 and down the back straight. You ride with race leader Bruno Junqueira. He is working overtime to try and keep his teammate at bay.
And here we are, this is heavy braking, this is down into turn 5. One of the slowest cars on track, that mile-wide turn. He gets the power on coming out. This is a drag race down now to turn 6. Probably one of the smoother sections of racetrack here. On the asphalt, as you can see, concrete on a lot of other parts of the racetrack. A little bit of understeer there for Bruno Junqueira. Can't quite get that front of the car to turn in as well as he would like. Here he is now, turn 8, 2 corners to go before the end of this lap. Then it'll be 3 more laps to the checkered flag, and that is the difference between first and second. Not very much, is it, Lee?
It has hardly been the most stellar year for the Target Chip Ganassi organisation. There's been on 2 occasions where all 3 cars have failed to finish the race. Reliability has been a bit of an issue this year. But look at this now, it's down to half a second. The Brazilian versus the New Zealander. 2 very, very hot properties in the world of open wheeler racing. The guy who leads the race at his first ever Indianapolis 500 put it on pole position. Mechanical problems forced him out of that race. Now look at Dixon, hard on the brakes into turn 5.
He wasn't close enough there, Scott Dixon, but if he needs to get a good run out of one of these corners, and maybe he can make a run on Junqueira. There is a Chip Ganassi there looking on. He looks pretty relaxed. I don't know how relaxed he'll be feeling inside. He's having a word there with Calvin Fish from the Speed Channel. But now look at that. There's only a car length or 2 between these 2. There's really, you've got to say turn 5 is the best overtaking opportunity on this Denver street course, but Scott Dixon, he'll be looking for any opportunity he can find.
Maybe Chip should see if he can get some extra money from Coors Light to run this car in this colours all year. Oh, big lock-up from Junqueira. He shows just how hard he is pushing and how much the pressure is getting to him. Dixon took just a 10th out. It's down to 4/10 of a second. But as you can see, there is nothing in it. We have got just 2 laps to go. If Dixon is going to make a move, he must do it, and he's got to do it soon. This is an overtaking opportunity coming up, but is Doc Dixon close enough? No, he is not. Down into turn 5 for the second last time. They run out. The last time the Ganassi team enjoyed a 1-2 was back in 2000 when Jimmy Vasser and Montoya finished 1-2. And speaking of Houston and street circuits, this is actually the first new street circuit on the kart calendar since Houston in 1997. Here we go, the white flag is out and Junqueira is on his way home. He has had a pretty good run this year. He's been struck down with some bad luck, but has been pretty impressive. Started from the pole position today, his second in 3 races, and his 3rd of the season. He won in Motegi earlier this year on the oval, but this is going to be something special. He's fought hard for it. He desperately wants to take the championship chase right up to his good friend and countryman Cristiano D'Amato, who maintains 3rd. But this is it. Time has run out for Scott Dixon. It's going to be Junqueira's day. There's only 2 corners to go. And Dixon is not giving up. He's taking the fight all the way to the line. But there's 1 corner and half the straight. Look at Dixon throwing everything at Bruno Junqueira. But the Brazilian will win the first ever Shell Grand Prix of Denver. Well done, Bruno Junqueira. But what about the drive from Dixon? Sensational stuff for the 2 drivers that work for that man there, Chip Ganassi.
So Bruno Junqueira holds off Scott Dixon to take the Shell Grand Prix of Denver. And what a race it was in the end. We've plenty to discuss here in the studio, and we'll join the celebrations at trackside and in Victory Lane. So stay with us, we'll be back in a moment.